Welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast.
Hello there from Bedford. How are you all? Are you all having a great week? I am. I'm having a really good week. Did you see the news yesterday? Did you see the big developments in the Craig Wright Ira Kleiman case? I think we can all welcome the rule of law being executed in the correct way here. I think we can all approve of that. Anyway, welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast, which is brought to you by Kraken, the #1 exchange for Bitcoin traders. I'm your host, Peter McCormack, and today I've got an interview with Casa's new product lead, Brian Lockhart, to discuss running a Bitcoin full node. But before that, let's hear from my amazing sponsors. And don't skip this couple of minutes where I talk about my sponsors pays for this to happen. So today's show is brought to you by the mighty BlockFi, the amazing BlockFi, my longest ever sponsor. They've been supporting me now for a year, so a big thanks to them. I might need to send them a little present to say thank you. And also, as we approach the end of the month, I am due my next payout from my interest account. I think I've had 5 now, so this is going to be my 6th. It's always quite exciting to log in to see how much interest I've made, which is very cool. I know a few of you have also taken out interest accounts. Some of you were a little bit reserved to begin with, but I've spoken to some of you, and you seem to be as happy as I am with it. I love the fact that every month my Bitcoin is working for me, and with a BlockFi interest account, you can earn interest every month on your Bitcoin, ETH, and GUSD. Also, with BlockFi, you have access to crypto-backed loans you can take against your Bitcoin, Ether, or Litecoin, and you might also want to check out the couple of interviews I've done with the BlockFi CEO, Zach Prince, who's an amazing guy. I did one quite a while back, I think that was episode 51, and another one recently with Jeremy Welch from Casa discussing their recent partnership. So if you are interested in finding out more, head over to blockfi.com, which is blockfi.com. And today, the show is also brought to you by Kraken, the mighty and amazing Kraken, the best place to buy and sell Bitcoin, the most comprehensive set of tools for traders out there. So are you using Kraken? Have you checked it out recently? Have you gone and seen everything they're doing for traders? Come on, go and check it out. Not only do they have Kraken.com, which is the best place to buy, sell, and trade digital currencies, they offer margin trading with up to 5x leverage for you crazy leverage traders. They also offer futures and indices. They've got the #1 OTC desk, Kraken OTC desk, for the large trades with private and personalized services. They've also got Crypto Watch, where you can trade on multiple exchanges from a single platform. And if you're an advanced trader and you want some amazing account management, they have the best account management service in the market. What more could you ask for? There really is no better place to buy and sell Bitcoin. So join me in supporting Kraken. Head over to kraken.com, which is KRAKEN.com. Okay, on to today's show. And some of you might have been following the topic of nodes on Twitter. I've been going through my own personal NodeGate experience. Yes, I hold my hands up. I haven't been running a Bitcoin node, and I know this is something I should have been doing as a Bitcoiner. I know it's triggered some people. Look, the truth is I did set up one on an old laptop quite a while ago. I downloaded the blockchain, but then I just never ended up doing anything with it, and that laptop's been packed away. I think actually I wiped that laptop and gave it to my daughter, and I've never got back around to it. I got myself a Casa node, and it just sat on the shelf, and look, there were a number of reasons. And when I was thinking about it, I was having a conversation with somebody about running a full node. And I was like, look, confession, I've not done it. And I was like, look, don't tell anyone. I was like, well, is this useful? Or would it be more useful to explain why I haven't done it and just be a bit more transparent about this? Because so many people say how important it is to run a full node. Yet there are like 10,000 maybe out there. I know we can't get the exact number, but it's nowhere near the target which Luke Dasher has. So yeah, I just thought, look, let's be honest about it. Let's talk about the reasons why I haven't done it. Partly it's because I'm lazy, partly because I was a bit intimidated by it. Not that I couldn't figure it out. Look, I'm not a complete moron. I figured out how to engineer podcasts using Audacity and GarageBand, and I've run my own website. I do the own coding, so I can easily go on Google and figure this out. But I don't think that was helpful. So I thought, look, I'm going to be transparent about this and say I haven't done it, and these are the reasons why. And little bits of information came into me, and having different conversations where people have reached out to me and looking at the discussions around it, this isn't as easy as everyone claims it is. All right, you can just plug your Casa node in, but is Casa a trusted third party? What is the difference between Casa and a Bitcoin core full node? With a Bitcoin core full node, I didn't have enough disk space, so people were like, well, use pruning, but other people said don't use pruning. And what about Tor? I need to set up Tor. And what about validating my own transactions? And I think anyone out there says this is easy, it's so easy to use. I think you've got to don't think you fully understand what it's like for some people, especially those who are less technical. And I know that this was the right thing to do, because I have had a bunch of people reach out to me and say, look, I'm feeling the same, Pete, or or a couple of people saying, look, I haven't set up a node, I know I need to. So yeah, I felt it was useful to do this. So I mean, bring it on, trolls, have a go at me, but I felt it was useful to go through this process. I'm learning. Hopefully I can share that with some of you out there. Look, if you've already got a node, don't worry about it, skip it, go and help somebody else. But I don't feel like trolling and insulting people for not having a node is particularly useful. If speaking quite a lot here, this is going to be quite a long intro, so I should probably move on and talk about the show, because this is about running a full node, and I was lucky to get Brian Lockhart from Casa on to discuss this. So he provides a bunch of insight into the trade-offs between the convenience of a simple wallet or a hardware wallet when compared with the security and self-custody of operating your own node, and we get into the reasons why you should be running a node, and not just so you don't get trolled on Twitter, but also, we talk about the difficulties of setting one up, or the different things you have to think about, or the different complexities. So, yeah, it was a useful interview. I'm glad to get Brian on. I hope you find it useful. And if you've got any feedback, you can reach out to me. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com. I do have a couple of updates. I'm flying out to LA tomorrow. I'm going to be heading out to Russell Kung's event, Bitcoin Is, which is on September the 1st. I'm going to be hosting a fireside chat with Russell, and I'm going to release that on the podcast, which is pretty cool. I'm also going to be heading out to Riga for the Honey Badger, which is September the 14th and 15th, which I will be emceeing. I'm also going to be heading to Wyoming for Caitlin Long's Wyo Hackathon, which is September the 19th to the 22nd. And then I'm going to be heading to Crypto Springs in Palm Springs, which is September the 23rd to the 25th. So lots happening. Hopefully going to meet up with a bunch of you at these events, talk about Bitcoin, grab a beer. So yeah, let me know if you're going to be there, if you want to chat. Anyway, on to the show. Just hit me up if you've got any questions. Look forward to hearing from you. Hello, Brian. How are you?
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and congratulations on the new role.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited to join the team at Casa.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing team that Jeremy's building there.
Yeah, I was very impressed with them. I initially met up with Jeremy as a potential customer. I was looking for a more user-friendly custody solution for my own assets, and I ended up being so impressed with them, I joined the company.
Yeah, Jeremy's always impressed me. I think I've done 2 podcasts with him now. And the other thing about him, he always makes me think. Like, he's always challenging me and making me think kind of far out things. But Casa are one of the companies I've always liked and always appreciated, because I'm a stickler for UX and design, and they just crush it the whole time.
Yeah, because as I don't think anyone would debate this, but Bitcoin's definitely got a ways to go for usability. And
yeah.
I like that I like that Casa is really trying to make Bitcoin easier to use for everyone, and not just like transact with it, but to hold it, to custody it, and then to transfer it, like in an inheritance planning situation. There's all kinds of things that I'm as a customer and as a employee worried about from Bitcoin's perspective. Like, got to make this better for everyone before it can take up mass adoption. So
yeah, we've not actually met in person, have we?
We met in San Francisco at the 2019 conference briefly.
Did we?
I think where was that?
Oh, it might have been at the garden.
I think it was at the Fidelity party.
Did I go to? Oh, yes. No, you're right. You're right.
That's
but it was very
yeah.
short, wasn't it? But
yeah, it was such a blur of a night. That was fun. That's the first time we met in person, though.
Yeah, but you and I, we've been kind of following each other on Twitter for quite a long time.
Yeah, it was kind of cool seeing you come into the scene. And like, I listen to podcasts when I go for walks or when I'm just doing stuff around the house. And I always try to maintain a mix of like more deeply technical or deeply business focused podcasts. And then I like to maintain a couple of go-tos for podcasts I can recommend to less nerdy people. And you're definitely in that camp. And I don't mean that as anything but a compliment. You do a really good job of breaking down more complex topics into digestible format. And you also ask questions that I know other people have, but you're able to articulate the question in a really relatable way such that the answer comes back in a digestible format. So I think that's a really good service that you offer for folks.
It's quite funny that you bring that up as well, because like I know that myself. I know why I'm doing it. I know my approach, but there's a lot of people who get really triggered by it. They're like, oh, you're a moron. You don't understand that. Why? And I'm like, look, I know the answer to some of these questions, but I'm asking them because I want the answer articulated for a listener. And I think some people are missing that. And I think that's, like, I've called it node gate, but this whole node thing, it's brought up a number of things. The fact that I want to talk to you about this, and actually, quite interestingly, I've reached out to you. I think, didn't I reach out to you initially about doing a conversation before this even kicked off?
We talked about something. I can't remember what we were going to do it for, but
I think I reached out to you and said, congrats on the job. Perhaps, do you want to come on? Yeah, I wanted to get the first interview with you. Now you've joined Casa. And then obviously this node thing's happened. And yeah, here we are. So it kind of makes it all good timing. But so listen, let's talk about nodes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach this in the simplest way possible. Now, I'm just going to preface this by saying that, and I put this in my tweet the other day, if I wanted to set up a Casa node, I know it's easy to do. I know it's plug and play. And I know if I want to set up a Bitcoin Core full node, I can figure it out. And I can probably figure out the Raspberry Pi. I'm not a complete moron. I know how to engineer shows when I didn't know how to engineer shows before. And I manage my website. I know how to go onto Google and do a search and figure this out. But my view on this is that I kind of wanted to make it a little bit more transparent, the learning process. And when I was back when I was a UX designer, the way you did it is everything has to be out loud thinking. So as you're going through a process, you just discuss the things you're thinking as you're thinking about it, so you can identify friction points. So that's why I've done it. And it's become almost a meme, and people have been really insulted the fact that I have a podcast and I haven't set up a node. But here we are. And the way I'm going to approach this is in the most basic way possible, because I think there are a lot of people who don't realize they should have a node, why they should have a node. I think some people don't really even know what it is. They will be intimidated by it, or they will have the inertia about setting it up. There's so much to unpack here. So I think we'll start very fresh. I'm gonna approach this with you like I've just discovered Bitcoin, right? Just imagine you're my buddy. You've told me about Bitcoin. I finally said, you know what? I've done it, Brian. I've been on Kraken. I've bought my first Bitcoin. Here we go. But, Brian, I've heard about these nodes. What the hell is a node? What is it? What is a node? Tell me about it.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think a lot of users that have come into Bitcoin are in this exact same situation where they've gotten Bitcoin not through the old way, which I'll cover later, I guess. But nowadays, you could just go to Coinbase or what have you, or Kraken, and just buy it. And then now what? Why should you do this? And then you hear somebody talking about what a node is. A node is basically just a piece of software that connects to the Bitcoin network and is an active participant on it. It downloads a complete copy of all transactions and all blocks, and it checks that they adhere to the Bitcoin consensus rules. This allows you to use your node to interact with the Bitcoin network in a trustless fashion, because you know that your node is enforcing the rules of Bitcoin as you want to use them. If you are not running with a Bitcoin full node, if you're just using a light mobile wallet on your phone, for example, you are trusting somebody else's node to handle transactions, to verify the blocks, to verify that you are using the consensus rules of Bitcoin. So if enough folks out there are not using Bitcoin full nodes, the security and economic strength of the network suffers, because you need to have enough folks out there distributed that are enforcing these rules and refusing to accept transactions and blocks that do not obey consensus rules. And just for simple example, the consensus rules could be as simple as 21 million hard cap. That's a really standard agreed upon rule that we have in Bitcoin, that there will be no more than 21 million. But what if a hostile actor, could be a miner, tries to mine a block that doesn't obey those rules and says, oh no, I'm going to go beyond that, or I'm going to mine things according to my rules? A block could be propagated out there, and a full node will not accept that block. It will reject it. Whereas a lightweight node might just blindly take it. In order to maintain a healthy network, you need to have enough folks out there that are running a full Bitcoin node. And so that's basically it. It's a piece of software. It has a wallet built into it that allows you to receive and send Bitcoin from a copy of the entire ledger, the Bitcoin blockchain, with all transactions in your copy of the memory pool right there on your system.
Okay, but there's two things there, because you're talking about almost like a duty to support the network by running a node, but there's also the secondary benefit of you being what Trace Mayer would call a first-class Bitcoin citizen. So let's unwrap them both. Let's talk about the duty to the network. Do we know how many nodes there are right now?
We don't know. There's not a really good way to estimate it, because while you can poll the network for the number of nodes that are in listening mode, you cannot tell how many nodes out there have not opened up a port. And we could talk about that a little bit later if you want. But by default, a lot of users just will download the software and run it. And the software will reach out to up to 8 connections and take down blocks. But it's not visible to others on the network unless you've opened up your port to allow inbound connections. So when you see numbers being quoted for number of nodes available on the network, it doesn't include the ones that are just in listening mode. So it's pretty hard. A couple of folks have tried. Luke Dash Jr. has a script that tries to scrape them. The number that gets tossed around is usually between 10 and 15,000, I think, is the maximum I've ever seen. But that doesn't include listening only modes or nodes. So it's hard to get a firm number.
But Luke talks about he believes that 85% of people using Bitcoin need to be running a full node in terms of protecting the security of the network. I haven't seen anyone else talk about this. Do you have like a view on that?
I think it's fallen out of the mindset of folks. I think there's a reason for the disconnect between early adopters of Bitcoin that believe more staunchly in running a full node versus those who don't. Just because when Bitcoin first came out, full nodes did everything. That was the only way to get or send or receive Bitcoin. You downloaded the full package of software, it would start slipping down the blocks. You had your wallet there. Mining was done on your node. Bitcoin nodes back then mined. So you had all these incentives to keep a full node running. You could be rewarded in Bitcoin if you mined and contributed and found a block. About must have been 11, that started to break off when GPU mining came into the fray, and then nodes became separate from miners rapidly after that. Now we have ASICs mining. But you still want to have X percentage of users on the network that are running a full node and respecting the consensus rules. I'm not exactly sure where the math comes in that gets to Luke's 85%. I'm sure he's done some good thinking about it, but there is a tipping point where if you have not enough nodes propagating and accepting valid transactions and blocks, then a hostile group of miners could propagate enough blocks that just get blindly accepted by light nodes, and then all of a sudden the network's split.
Right, okay. So already, though, a bunch of the language we've covered in here is going to go over certain people's heads. And
Correct.
Also, whilst there is this duty to the network, one that I've obviously disregarded myself. I've disregarded my own duty as someone who is, pretty deep involved in Bitcoin. One of the things you said earlier as well is that if you aren't running a full node, you are trusting somebody else's node. I trust Ledger or Trezor by using one of their hardware wallets. Okay, so I trust them. And people are saying you shouldn't be doing that. You should be running your own full node. But I can't see any reason not to trust Trezor or Ledger. And I've never heard of an example of where they have done anything as a bad actor. So are we in a situation here where we've got so many people coming into Bitcoin now? It's not just like this hardcore early group of people who've discovered Bitcoin. There's millions of people around the world hearing about Bitcoin. Some are buying and holding on exchanges. Some are just getting on a hardware wallet. Is this the new reality is that it is okay to trust a wallet, but whilst it's okay to trust a wallet, we should be encouraging people? Or do you think there needs to be more of a grassroots hardcore campaign to encourage people to run a node?
I think it's just a basic mind shift in self-sovereignty and taking responsibility for your own data and your own communications, including money, versus what we've in the West especially gotten so used to is trusting third parties. And I'm sure you've heard the quote, trusted third parties are security holes. And even though we have not seen an example of someone like a Trezor betraying trust, the world's full of examples of trusted third parties betraying the trust of their users, banks especially. And so Bitcoin offers a way for you to not give away more trust than you have to. And so I think the ethos comes from, well, why would I voluntarily give away trust if I don't have to? If this software that I've got right here, readily available and not that hard to set up, if that allows me to run trustless, why wouldn't I do that? And so I think the way you tiered it a little bit. You had priority 1 being altruistic and help the network, and priority 2 being, I forget, like looking out for yourself. I would flip that. I think your priority 1 for wanting to run a node is so you are confirming your own wealth, your own Bitcoin is safe. I like to tell folks sometimes that, you can talk all you want about the node count, but the only node that matters is yours. And that's the node that you're running and confirming your own inbound money on. And if enough people think that way, it maintains that healthy tension of trustlessness. And it's okay to have companies out there and give them the benefit of the doubt. It's convenient. It's definitely convenient being able to point to somebody else who's already stood up a node and has the block explorer and has it all running and all that. But we shouldn't completely abandon the ideals of Bitcoin, which are being able to do it all yourself. Like
Right,
whether or not it's easy to do is a variable, because like the ease of use could get better over time. But I personally worry that enough folks have gotten lured in by the convenience of all these other services that to them it's not important enough to take on the extra steps of running their own nodes. Like I worked in computer security for a large part of my life, and I like to tell folks like convenience is a heck of a drug. Like passwords, oh man, like complex passwords, those are really inconvenient. You can't remember them. You have to use a password manager or some other mechanism. It'd be so much easier if you just didn't use passwords, right? But then there's the obvious downsides of that.
Well, Casa are obviously doing an amazing job in encouraging people to set up a node. And I think they've done it in a number of ways. It's quite clever. Firstly, they've created something that's beautiful. It just looks good. It looks cool. I've got mine now set up downstairs. It's processing blocks. The UX is amazing, and the company has a really nice product, actually multiple products now, which sit alongside it. But going back to your point in that trusted third parties as security hold, could you apply that also to Casa? And I don't mean that to be kind of like inflammatory. I really do love Casa and the whole team. But if I buy a Casa node and you're preloading the blocks, is that also a trusted third party? Is that also then a security hole?
Yeah, this is a good example of like trying to find that balance, strike a balance between convenience and absolute trustlessness. So yes, you are trusting Casa when you buy a Casa node when it's come preloaded with the blockchain. You're trusting that we haven't slipped you fake blocks or a bad blockchain or bad consensus version of Bitcoin Core. You do, however, have the option of resetting the thing and starting the whole Bitcoin download yourself from scratch. The reason we preloaded is the Raspberry Pi 3 hardware it runs off of is pretty slow. And so it would take a long time and might theoretically never catch up. If you just started from zero, it would just take so long, it'd be a bad user experience. So for a good user experience, we preload it onto the hard drive. And by the time it gets to you and you plug it in, it's behind by days, maybe weeks, however long it is since we set it up for you. But you can catch up relatively quickly. So we decided to strike a balance of like convenience of preloading it, but always give the user the option to say, I don't trust you, Casa. I want to start over from zero. And you have that option in the dashboard.
And I've got mine preloading now. I've got mine catching up with the blocks now, obviously, because I left mine up here on the shelf for a little bit too long for getting around to it. Do you, because I've approached this, and one of the reasons I put off setting up a node is for a couple of reasons. One was lazy. I was just lazy. I've had other things on. It's like, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do it the next day, blah, blah, blah. So I never got round to it. And that is, something I think I can be criticized for. I was also a little bit intimidated, but it was almost like a fear without actually, it wasn't even a rational fear. I was intimidated because of a bunch of collective information that's come to me. Obviously people say you can plug in a node and it just works, but I'm already in the comfortable position where my Trezor or my Ledger just works for me. I've never had a problem. Okay, I'm trusting the third party, but it has worked for me. But I've had little bits of information coming into me with regards to my node. If I was to set up a node, one person specifically referring to verifying my UTXOs, and I was like, oh God, that sounds like, I don't know, it sounds a little bit technical, a little bit out of my depth. So I just kind of put it off. How do you think we approach this? Because one of the things I think is almost moronic is that as I kind of try to be a bit transparent about this, it's certainly triggered some people to get kind of upset about this. And we've had people say things such as, directly critical to me, but also saying, if you want to be self-sovereign, if you are interested in Bitcoin, then you have to learn all this stuff. But I don't see a way of converting 85% of people. I think to get 10% of people running a node would be incredible. Like, how do you think we break this down to improve things?
Yeah, so I think firstly there's this dynamic between and this is common across a lot of things. You get folks that have been in a space for a long time and they're experts at it. They're really deep in it, and then a rookie wanders in and asks questions. And rather than like, oh, hey, looks like you're interested in trying this out. Maybe I'll give you a really easy path with not too much confusion to help you along the way. They bombard them with options. It'd be like if like, okay, like you're a guitar player, you know how to play this stuff, that, the other, and I ask you, hey, that looks kind of fun. I'm about to try it, and you immediately start bombarding me with like what strings I have to get and what exact manufacturer and like this amp, not that amp, like just bombarding me, and all of a sudden I've got analysis paralysis, and I just wanted to learn how to play the guitar. So I don't know if you played or if you still do play video games or when you were a kid or maybe even now, but I watched this firsthand when I was at Microsoft. I was one of the early members of the Xbox team. And so what we were doing is trying to set out to make a premium gaming experience that was more accessible to folks. And like in the early days of gaming, the first consoles, think about what they were really used for. They were really simplistic games, mostly for little kids. But if you wanted to play like a more hardcore, high-end with high-end graphics and online network gaming, you needed to have like a pretty healthy PC, a gaming PC, like a rig that you needed to build up yourself. And you needed to know how to configure autoexec bat config.sys. You needed to learn how to configure your video card drivers, sometimes multiple video cards. You needed to have your audio card in there. You needed to know how to do all this stuff to have a premium gaming experience that you just couldn't get on consoles. And then all of a sudden you get these like next generation consoles like the PlayStation 2 and then the Xbox we came out with also, where we really tried to like make it accessible for folks to have a high fidelity HD gaming experience that just plugged into your TV. You had this plastic box, you just plug into your TV, hook up a controller, and bam, you're playing a beautiful game, having a blast. And when that started to happen, you see this almost elitist backlash, like, oh, you're not a real gamer if you're playing console games. Like, you can't possibly appreciate gaming if you haven't gone through all this. And I was in the gaming industry, and you would catch a little bit of hell for like, it was almost, I couldn't understand, like, why are you so pissed off about bringing in normies? Like, we're expanding the game space, we're expanding the market, we're expanding the viability of being a game developer if there's a higher number of people that can buy your game. And it took a while to get that point. And I see a similar attitude happening in Bitcoin now, where we have folks that have come up only knowing how to do it fully manually with the command line interface. And to them, maybe they're a little, I don't know, scoffing of those who won't take the time to learn like they did. And I get that. I get that to a certain extent. But at the same time, I also knew that there's no way Bitcoin's going to take off if they had to also have all these prerequisite knowledge bases to be successful. Like, I'm never going to get my normie friends to sit down and fire up a terminal and run command line options to get their Bitcoin. So I think that we have to meet those folks halfway. And as long as we don't sacrifice on the fundamentals, that's okay for everyone. Like, I do see the danger in some approaches that some folks are taking, where they'll have like a wallet that is custodial. And I'm assuming at this point users will know the difference between custodial and non-custodial. A custodial wallet can by very nature be very fast. So the user experience is great, but it's only fast because it's taking what I would call shortcuts. It's not doing a full validation of the transaction. It's relying on another service or someone else's node, basically. And in some cases, depending on the project, they won't even require a confirmation. And so those are taking shortcuts in the name of usability that I don't think are acceptable. And so I'm really glad that there's companies out there like Casa that are still adhering to the run your full node, trustless ethos, but are also trying to make it still as easy as possible to use. Like, we just came out with a phone app called Sats app, and that lets you interact with your Casa node. And so you can still send Sats using the Lightning Network. And it's all being done on your phone, so it's pretty and it's slick and all that. But it's making all the calls back to your node running at home. So all the actual activity is taking place on a Bitcoin full node. It's just abstracted away from the user a little bit. Another wallet that's really doing a good job with that is Zap, like Jack. Yeah, Jack. I love what he's doing with that. So that's the quote right way unquote to do it. And I think as long as there are folks like Jack and Casa, they're keeping that attitude, we'll be okay. What I worry about is like too many wallet implementations, like lightweight wallets that don't rely on a full node. If those become successful, it weakens the economic security and strength of the Bitcoin network and just leaves us more vulnerable.
Yeah, so Jack will hate me for saying this, and he'll punch me when I next see him. But like my experience so far with Lightning, I've got custodial and non-custodial, and my custodial experience via my Blue Wallet is brilliant.
Yeah, it's slick. Brilliant. It's fast.
Yeah, and also to the point where I'm like, well, I don't mind keeping like $100 in my custodial wallet because, you know, if I lose it, it's only $100 and the experience makes it worthwhile and, you know, nothing's happened yet. But I understand the point also that we need, you know, this is in the ethos of Bitcoin. We need to be non-custodial. Okay, so let's go back to the nodes. Let's talk about this a bit more detail. So, okay, so you've convinced me, right? Okay, Brian, I hear you. I need to run a node. This is great. Okay, there's a few options, right? I've got, I can run a Bitcoin Core node and, you know, download the full blockchain, and I can set up a Casa one. There's Nodal and there's Raspberry Pi, and obviously you're aware, I've looked at them all.
Yep.
Okay, so I've had a play with the Raspberry Pi. I'm almost going to give up with that already. It's just too much effort. All the instructions weren't helpful. The gear turned up to get today, and then I was missing bits I didn't realize I needed. And it's just like, I love it. I think it's great for anyone who's a little techie and they want to sit there and fiddle with things. I don't want to do that. So I'm binning that one off. So I'm gonna do my Bitcoin Core node on my external drive from my Mac. I'm gonna set up my Casa node. I'm gonna set up my Nodal. What are the reasons for choosing, say, I'm going to put Casa and Nodal together. What are the reasons for choosing those over a Bitcoin Core node? And at the same time, are there any reasons to choose a Bitcoin Core node over a Casa and Nodal?
So right off the bat, Bitcoin Core is the implementation of the software, and that is running on all the options you just mentioned.
Of course,
so
yeah.
When you have a Casa node or a Nautilus, or I want to say everyone, but all these folks you see out there with their Raspberry Pis, they're downloading and running Bitcoin Core. It's just a question of how fast it will run, depending on what option they choose and how usable it is. And as you've seen, like the tinkerers and those that are a little more tech savvy can be successful pretty quickly with a Raspberry Pi or a similar micro PC, like that. But if you're not already a little bit comfortable or experienced in mucking about with that stuff, it can be a frustrating experience. And even if you get it all right, it's just not going to be as fast as even I would say a medium grade laptop. They're not trying to compete with full hardware. Raspberry Pi is trying to come up with do as much as you can with a very small piece of compute. And they do a pretty good job with that. But then backing up too, like, the Bitcoin Core developers want to make it as easy as possible to run Bitcoin Core. If the requirements to run Bitcoin Core are so high that only wealthy individuals with high-end PCs can run it, then we run the risk of centralization. And if you take that to the logical extreme, you have like a core node that is so weighty that it requires like a server and a data center to run, then you've gone straight back to full centralization. And you can laugh and point fingers at Ethereum or Bitcoin SV as examples of that, where if you have like implementations or block sizes that are so huge that you couldn't possibly run it on a consumer grade piece of hardware, that's a problem, and it just drives towards centralization.
Well, that's interesting you should say that, because it's quite cool that in 10 and a half years now of Bitcoin, that the entire blockchain is still under 250 gigabytes.
Yeah, it's going to keep growing, of course, because as people make more transactions, it's going to keep growing. But along the way, the developers have made it less painful to run a node on okay grade hardware. It's faster to sync a node now than it ever was when I got started. It's getting faster with every release, typically. They're definitely, it's getting harder and harder to eke out performance gains because there's only so much they can do, but it's definitely gotten faster. And so I think the crux of your question is like, what do you get for running it on a PC versus running it on a Casa node or et cetera? When you run it on a limited piece of hardware, you probably are going to have to give up things like speed or a full index. And if you give up a full index, for example, you can't really point a block explorer against it, which is another cool way to use your node. And this is one of those things where it's like, once you have a node, well, what do I do with it? And the core use case of node ownership is to receive payments, send payments, etc. Do that in self-sovereign way to use Bitcoin. But as you begin running and using your node, and you start to ask, what else can I do with it? Well, you might want to run a block explorer on it. And for that, you need a full index. You might want to run a Lightning node on top of it. That will require more resources as well. So a lot of folks might not realize that to run Bitcoin Lightning, it runs in concert with a Bitcoin node. You need both to be able to use Lightning.
Right, okay. I guess one of the reasons everybody wants a Casa node, like whenever I run a competition, I get so many applications. Everyone wants one because it's cool and it's interesting. It's got a beautiful interface. I would guess an advantage on a Bitcoin node, if you download the software from and run it on your laptop, is that you've got no cost of entry there, really. You've got...
True. You've got the sunk cost of the hardware itself. All those things aside, it's free, and it's very simple to download it and run it, as long as you've got like a fast enough network connection that's mostly always on, and you've got enough disk space on your laptop or your desktop. It's pretty trivial to run Bitcoin Core. There are other implementations I'm less experienced with. I've just got more time playing with Bitcoin Core.
But also, if you do choose to get a Casa node, you get a Lightning node as well.
Correct. Yeah. So the Casa node comes pre-configured with both Bitcoin Core and LND, which is one of several Lightning Network protocol implementations. The other most popular one being C Lightning. But LND is the Lightning Network daemon written by Lightning Labs. They're the main contributor behind LND, and that runs on top of Bitcoin Core. So the Casa node, we like to think of it as the easiest one-stop plug-and-play solution for folks that want to both set up a node and start using Lightning almost immediately.
So how does a Lightning node differ from a Bitcoin Core node? And also, what is it syncing and downloading in a different way? Obviously, I get the full blockchain with the Bitcoin Core node. What's different with a Lightning node?
So this is a bigger conversation about what is Lightning, but for a Lightning node to function, it has to keep track of when Bitcoin funds move into a channel. So when they come off the main chain, the main Bitcoin chain, and lock into a channel, that's a transaction that's recorded, and it needs to keep track of these channel states. So to do that, the Lightning Network daemon is constantly scanning the Bitcoin blockchain to look for these transactions. And I'm simplifying this greatly, but without those two working together, LND and Bitcoin Core, you wouldn't be able to keep track of when funds open a channel, or conversely, when they close out. When the channels are closed out, that's recorded back to the blockchain as well. So Lightning Network has to keep in sync with the Bitcoin network. And to do that, a lot of folks prefer to have it running on the same device. Okay. That's what Casa is doing.
And my Casa implementation hasn't fully loaded yet. I've obviously have the screen open up and it says Bitcoin, it says Lightning. I've got my settings, etc.
Yeah.
If I was to deposit funds into my Casa Bitcoin wallet and also deposit funds into my Lightning wallet, within the Casa interface, is there an easy way to move funds between wallets?
Yes, and the way that we expose it is there's a Bitcoin receive and send function. When you're all synced up, you'll see it. There's basically three panels. One is for Bitcoin, one's for Lightning, and one's for settings and connections. The Bitcoin one acts much like you'd see a Bitcoin wallet on your phone. You have a send, a receive, and a balance, and a list of transactions. When you open channels in the Lightning side, it's pulling from that Bitcoin balance to open a channel. And then you'll see a list of channels and whether you have both inbound or outbound or both capacity for that channel. And it'll tell you, okay, well, now that I've got these channels open, my maximum send is this, my maximum receive is that.
Okay.
So when it's up and running, you'll see that it's sunk the entire Bitcoin blockchain. It should say 100%, and it'll show you what block number it's at. And then the Lightning daemon is syncing at the same time. So once those are both caught up and all the way to the end of the tip, then you're up and running.
Next up, I talked to Brian more about running a full node, but before that, I do have a message from my amazing sponsors. So let's talk to you about Cointing. Right, they've been with me 3 months now. You've heard their name a bunch of times, but have you checked them out? Have you downloaded the app, or have you been to their website? They are the best crypto tax calculator in the market. I know this because I checked some of the others out. Also, with their sponsorship coming to an end, I do want to give them a nice boost. I do want to say thanks for everything they've done. So please do go check out their website, go and download their app. They've got this amazing portfolio manager, which is a step up from all other portfolio managers I've seen and I've used. And with tax season over, it's still really important to keep track of your transactions, and it's always useful for the accounting process. So that's why you should be using Accointing. It is the most complete portfolio tracking tool in the market, offering both desktop and app versions. So you can be checking it out while you're watching the football, while you're walking down the road, whether you're on a bus or a plane. You can be interacting with your Accointing app. And with just one click of a button, you have everything you need ready for next tax season. The tool was created by crypto traders, with crypto traders, for crypto traders, always knowing what is relevant to both the amateur as well as the professional in mind. They've got a huge update coming. I'm hoping I'm going to find out this before the sponsorship ends. But please do go and check them out. It's accointing.com, which is ACCOINTING.com, and also just search for Accointing in the iPhone or Android app stores if you want to try out the mobile app. And lastly, and never least for me, is Dropbit today, the best Bitcoin mobile wallet I've used. I absolutely love these guys, love everything they're doing. I now use the app all the time. I'm using it to send and receive Bitcoin, just as they told me, like a Venmo for Bitcoin. They've got these amazing features where not only can you do the standard pasting of address or scanning a QR code, but you can text Bitcoin to people. And the thing I love is when you can tweet Bitcoin to people. I'll probably do another giveaway soon. I'll start tweeting people some Bitcoin. They are hard at work on a bunch of new features. I've been trying to get hold of them. I've been trying to get them down so we can talk about some things, and they keep saying, look, Pete, piss off, leave us alone. We're busy. We're building shit. Just go away. But I will be having to catch up with them soon. They've got some badass stuff coming I can't wait to tell you about. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, if you've not checked out Dropbit, come on, go and check it out. It's available on the iPhone and Android. Just head over to dropbit.app, which is dropbit.app. Okay, so look, let's imagine I'm up and running. I'm going to have both. I'm going to have my Bitcoin full node from Bitcoin Core, and I'm going to have my Casa node.
You'll have two nodes.
Yeah, I'll have two nodes. So I'll be contributing to the network. So people have said about, well, the great thing is you can verify your UTXOs. Now, is this a manual process where I'm actually looking at UTXOs, or is this the fact that because I'm running the node, this is being done automatically for me and there's no chance of there being a mistake?
It's a little bit of both. With the Casa, with both nodes, if the block is accepting the transaction that's been broadcast, and as well as accepting the block that's been mined, that is validating what's going on the network that you're participating in. If you want to go dig in and look at the transactions themselves, you're going to use what's called you can do it from the command line, but you'd probably be better off doing it with a blockchain explorer. And that could be something that you point to your own node, not with the Casa one currently. We're considering that in future releases, but on your Bitcoin full node running on your laptop, you could definitely install any number of explorers and look at the transaction right there on your PC. You could also do this on the public blockchain too. Like there's lots of public-facing blockchains. You gain privacy by doing it locally on your own node, though, because anytime you look at a transaction or an address or a block content on a public explorer, someone can tell you were looking at that, and if someone was trying to really sniff you out, they could map your IP address and see, oh, okay, Peter's looking at these 3 addresses every couple of days. I bet those are his. Oh, look, he's got Bitcoin. And that sounds awfully paranoid, but that's very possible. And people do give up their privacy.
Yeah, they do. And I think a lot of people will without knowing it. But why do you need to look at the UTXOs and actually physically validate them? If the block's being processed, what good reason is to go in and check them?
Well, there's 2 levels of validation, right? So if you're running your full node and you've created an address and say, hey, person who owes me Bitcoin, send it. Once you've received it there, that is you validating it. You trust that you're running the current copy of Bitcoin Core. You are seeing that you've got 6 confirmations now in your wallet on your Bitcoin node. Therefore, you personally are confident that it's happened. You don't have to go in deeper than that. If you are, by contrast, not running your own node and or not waiting for confirmations, you're crossing your fingers and hoping that whoever's node is doing the validation.
Right, I see. I still just don't think, like, as Bitcoin grows, a very low percentage of people are actually going to be doing that. Most people are going to be trusting something at some point or another, and I think I accept that, and
yeah.
I think a lot of it's too technical.
But if they're trusting the node software, that's a hell of a lot better than legacy systems.
Yeah, a lot better than trusting like a hardware wallet. Okay, so the next thing I'm thinking about, so I've got my node set up. I have a choice of depositing all my Bitcoin into that node and using that as my primary wallet. But other people talked about actually, no, what you want to do is connect another wallet to it. A lot of people talk about Electrum. Talk to me about that. Why would you use Electrum over the inbuilt wallet?
I think one of the biggest gaps right now in Bitcoin Core is easy integration with hardware wallets and multi-sig. And Electrum handles those two things very well. And so there's pros and cons to using Electrum. The pros are, so backing up, Electrum is a augmented Bitcoin full node. It works with your full node to let you transact with Bitcoin using a multitude of wallets. You can open a wallet locally, natively in Electrum. You can connect to your Trezor. You can do multi-sigs with multiple Trezors or a Trezor in a ledger, yada, yada, yada. It just gives you much more control over what wallets you're using. The downsides of Electrum are, by default, you are trusting a pool of Electrum servers that may or may not be run by people you want to trust. So if, let's say, a state actor wanted to, or Chainalysis, like the joke is like, oh, all those public Electrum servers out there that are pulling information and sharing transaction information, half of those are run by Chainalysis. And so if you're trusting your transactions, if you're trusting your transactions on Electrum, you're letting Chainalysis see everything you do. Do you want that? You can get around that by running Electrum personal server, which only monitors your wallet, transactions that take place in your wallet, and don't call out to other servers. So that's a mitigation for that. I do think that that's a little beyond what your average newbie to Bitcoin is going to want to set up. Yeah. I do think that businesses and or folks that are working with significant amounts of Bitcoin, that is their current best approach, is to fire up a Electrum personal server or Electrum server of their own and work with it that way. That said, they are working on enabling hardware wallets really easily in Bitcoin Core. And so I would expect to see that in a future version of Bitcoin Core.
Yeah, good, because I'm telling you now, so this is what I'm kind of getting at. You know, if I'm down the pub with some of my friends, I'm like, look, come on, you need to get into Bitcoin. And they're like, okay, Pete, we're going to do it. I was like, okay, sign up, get yourself a Kraken account or a Coinbase account and buy some Bitcoin, and then get yourself a ledger and you just transfer it to your hardware wallet and put it away. Like, that's not hard. But if I turn around and say, well, you know, once you've bought your Bitcoin, what you need to do is you need to set up a Bitcoin full node. You need to connect that to a Electrum personal server, and with that, you need a hardware wallet to connect to create your multi-sig. They're gone.
Yeah, you've just lost 99% of the people you might have had on the hook.
but I tell you what, if you turn around to them and say, yeah, what you need is a Casa node, which is also a wallet, and you need this app, and you can do it all from the Casa node in your app, you're going to get a lot more people in.
Yeah, and so Casa is really trying to make this easier to use with our Keymaster app right now, which allows you to use multi-sig, storing one key on your phone, and other keys could be on hardware wallets. One could be stored with Casa. That's a lot easier than asking folks to own their entire setup and running an Electrum server. I totally get it. When I try to explain how to securely store significant amount of Bitcoin to people, I run into these hurdles a lot.
Well, I guess it's how much you've got as well. Like, you know, if somebody's got $500 of Bitcoin, there's probably little point in them buying a $300 Casa node and setting up, buying 2 hardware wallets and set up multi-sig. I guess, though, we're at the point where maybe if you had one Bitcoin, that is a worthy investment, because that one Bitcoin could be worth a lot more in the future, and you're teaching yourself about it now. I would say this potentially identifies one of the problems. in that I would love to know what the kind of some of the average balances are. If you wipe out all the top Bitcoin holders, like I would imagine the majority of people own less than $5,000 of Bitcoin. Maybe the majority own less than $1,000 of Bitcoin. So it's going to be very difficult to convince these people that they have a responsibility for the network and also a responsibility for themselves. I think most of them are going to go, the typical inertia and go, this is just too much effort for my $1,000 of Bitcoin, my $1,500 of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it's going to evolve to a point where people think of it in terms of like, what's my pocket cash versus my checking account versus my savings account, and the amounts change as you go through those different levels. Like maybe you carry $40 in your wallet, $100, you keep 1,000 in your checking account, you keep 10,000 in your savings account, things like that. And then for each of those different levels, you could have appropriate levels of security. Like you're probably not going to put $50 in deep cold storage. It requires you to, go to safety deposit boxes to get at it. You might do that if you're storing millions, for example.
Yeah.
So what I think, bringing it back to the node though, what I think will happen is, let's assume that Lightning really gets taken off, and so Lightning becomes the pocket change or checking account even amounts of transactions on the network. Like the holy grail of the people that say Bitcoin for payments is like buying coffee. You're not going to buy coffee with something on a hardware wallet, most likely. You're going to buy coffee with something on an app on your phone, which could just be a quick barcode scan. But if that phone app is talking to, in this example, your Casa node back home, you're still validating all those transactions. You're validating what the channel opening and closing transactions were with your own node. So that I think is the best of both worlds, where you still have your node operating back home, maybe with your checking account amount of funds on it, feeding into Lightning channels, which may have your pocket cash amount of funds on it, which you can drive from your phone anywhere on Earth. And then you could take it the next extreme and go, okay, well, now I've got my pocket and my checking account dollar amounts running around in here, but my longer term storage could be controlled through like your multi-sig via Keymaster, which could, let's just say, for example, is also talking to your node. So you can run that whole spectrum.
Do you think one of the problems also here is, like, obviously we love Bitcoin because it's decentralized, but do you think one of the other problems here, because of decentralization, there is an inconsistency of experiences, implementations, terminology across various wallets and hardware wallets? So it's almost like for the non-technical, the newcomers, like, shit, how do I wrap my head around all this stuff? Because I look at Bitcoin itself, I think it's not too bad. It's kind of like, here is an address, here is a balance. If you want to send some to another address, you paste it in here. An hour or two later, the confirmation is going to happen. You add Lightning to that, you suddenly got this new experience, whereas, well, you can move balances between Bitcoin and Lightning, but you have to think about channels, and also you've got channel capacity. Like, it's almost like it's just too much.
That I fully agree, and I think that right now a Lightning network is too many concepts. You're asking folks to understand too many concepts before they can make their quick and easy payment. I think that will become abstracted away. I think you'll have wallets that dynamically change modes behind the scenes. So say you walk into a car dealership, you might be asked like, hey, put down $1,000 and you can get this car loan going. Well, you fire up your Bitcoin app. That app will know, oh, it's this amount of money, this amount of Bitcoin I need to move. It will just automatically in the background go to a main Bitcoin chain, maybe a multi-sig, et cetera. If you then take that same app and walk into a Starbucks and you want to buy your coffee, it's going to say, oh, $5. Well, that's going to take a different path. It'll run through Lightning, but under the covers. So the user won't have to make a decision and figure out like, well, am I using Lightning or Bitcoin? I think we need to get to that point where you just have your Bitcoin app handles it for you under the covers and finds the fastest and or cheapest method of making the transaction.
Right. And in that app, do you think it will be keeping a certain amount of your Bitcoin in Lightning and a certain amount in like the Bitcoin base chain? Or do you think it will be moving funds around for you automatically? Because again, for example, I've heard about this being abstracted away, but I was like, well, okay, that's fine. But if it has to open up a Lightning channel, it has to create an on-chain transaction. So therefore, it has to take some balance away from my Bitcoin. So at some point, it's got to, surely it needs to then ask me the decision, like...
You could give it a limit. You could say when you set up, like, what's my spending limit for opening channels automatically without asking for further confirmation? Like,
Yeah.
I could think about my credit cards now. I can configure them to alert me if I try to do something over a certain amount, or if my balance in my savings account dips below blah, it'll send me an email. You could do things like that, but I do think that that's where things need to go for usability. Like, don't make the user have to think about, well, geez, do I have a Lightning channel? Do I have enough inbound liquidity to receive this payment? It should just happen. I think you could have it configurable such that, okay, I authorize the app to move up to half a Bitcoin around in channels without asking me every step along the way. Like right now, Lightning Network has a concept called autopilot in LND, where you can do just that. And we expose that. You'll see it in the Casa node when you get into that menu. You can enable autopilot if you don't have any existing channels, and it'll take X amount of Bitcoin, chop it up into Y amount of channels that you determine what those limits are, and it'll just go for it for you. I think that's a step in that direction.
So I guess we can't get away from the fact that there is going to be always a certain amount of kind of education and learning to become part of this.
Correct.
One of the things I do hope is that there is some kind of consistency between the various apps and the experiences, because at the moment it can be quite disjointed, and I think that is confusing. And I sometimes I'm like, okay, Pete, just forget about it. Just accept stuff's complicated and accept it. But at the same time, I keep thinking and just like, I knock myself on the head again. A lot of this stuff really is complicated. Like we are not helping people enough.
No, none of this stuff's easy, and especially for folks that are living in developed first world nations, you got to be honest and say, like, how many problems is Bitcoin solving for you? Like, it's adding problems, man. It's making it harder for you. But what do you get for your trouble? You get permissionless, unconfiscatable money. Like there's no takebacks, and that is valuable. And it's also sound money. It's got a good economic policy behind it.
Yeah, it's sound money. Actually, I got into an interesting conversation with somebody yesterday about this, because we were talking about cashless societies, and yeah, this is great, but there is a certain amount of people who will be left behind with this. Like if we're going more into the realms of digital money and cashless society, but there are people who will be left behind. This, in some ways, a cashless society is discriminatory as well, because people can use cash anywhere.
Oh, it's absolutely discriminatory. Yeah, if you have folks that are unbanked or just have a hard problem cashing a check, for example, they're out of luck. Like I see that here in Seattle. Like, Seattle's a pretty liberal, left-leaning environment, and you've got like all these tech companies that are trying to make cashless stores. The Amazon store that it's still there. You walk in with your phone, your Prime membership, and just boom, you buy everything in an Amazon store without even whipping out cash. In fact, it didn't take cash. And they complained about that it was discriminatory to folks that didn't have a smartphone, didn't have a bank account, et cetera. I'm a big fan of cash for all those reasons and more. It's just, it is far more private than anything digital.
Yeah, because I was getting into the debate, was like, okay, Bitcoin is the hardest form of money, but is it the best? Like, is it really? Like, in some ways, I understand the argument. I think it's the best if you have and understand all the technology. If you have a node and you understand it, if you have a mobile and you have a wallet and you understand it. But is it the best form of money if you're homeless? No, the best form of money is cash, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we kind of have to try and remember that. Like, there are a bunch of people who talk about, Bitcoin solving so many problems for the world and how great hyper-Bitcoinization is. But actually, like, I don't think it solves problems for everyone. Like, I think we're forgetting about the kind of the real world for many, many people who struggle day to day. Like, I've just been out in Vietnam and Cambodia. You've got so many people who are just like street vendors and street sellers who are selling banana pancakes and handmade hats out. Bitcoin isn't for them. Bitcoin has no use for them. Right now, they want the dollar.
Yeah, but I would even argue that Bitcoin can be for them as well. And there are companies that are making it easier to use Bitcoin on lower power phones, like not a full tilt iPhone, but like just text-based. Check out Azteco, which is Beauty on Twitter.
Yeah.
Azteco is his thing. I think he's got a shop in London that's up and running right now that's letting you buy Bitcoin that way. So like, there are folks like that are really not forgetting about that part of the population.
No, of course. I just think the reality is like, even if you could sit down and explain it to them, these people are going to be like, I've just got to survive day to day, and I just need my dollars to survive day to day. So
I do think that it is going to get better over time, though.
yeah.
A lot of people would use the analogy of like it's early days. Think about how hard email was back at one point, and like I can relate to that. I remember like I was a computer science student where I had to use a terminal session to send email using Pine, and that just dated myself quite a bit. But then look what happened.
Yeah.
Like email clients got super easy to use. Probably like think back to like God, like CompuServe in America Online probably did more for email than anyone else because they dumbed it down so that anyone could use email, and then people just got used to having that concept in their head. They abstracted away all these hard concepts of what is SMTP versus IMAP versus what are the forwarding servers I need to use? Like, how do I find a route for this email? Like, no one knows how to do that in email because you don't have to. And I think in Bitcoin, we're not there yet. And I am hopeful that it's going to get better. And that's why I was excited to join Casa, because there's a whole team of people that are thinking that same thing. Just being realistic about it. You have to make this stuff less finicky to use, but you can't compromise on the security and the privacy and the things that make Bitcoin unique. It's a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so look, if somebody's listening to this, Brian, they're like, okay, I'm interested. I've heard a bit. I think I need to know more about this. Beyond going and buying themselves a Casa node, where would you recommend they go to learn more, to read about this, to kind of get a bit more of an understanding about nodes and why they should run one?
My default go-to is just bitcoin.org. They have some pretty good user-friendly getting started resources. They talk about how it's used both from a merchant perspective and from a end user perspective. They talk about what wallets you can try, including Bitcoin Core is one of them. There's phone wallets. There's all kinds of examples there. I still think that's a really good jumping off point. From there, if they really want to understand more about what a full node is and why it's important to use it, there's a really good website called en.bitcoin.it. I'll send you the link, and maybe you could put that in the show notes. And that gives not overly technical, but very well written. It's like a Wikipedia for Bitcoin. And they have really good write-ups for all manner of things, including full nodes, all things about Bitcoin. I would send people there. If they go deeper than that, lop.net, Jameson Lop, I'll shill for him every day of the week.
Course.
Even before he was a coworker, I used to shill that site.
Yeah.
He has a really good, like, starting from Explain It Like I'm Five all the way down to the deeper stuff. Those are really good places to learn about Bitcoin in general. And then, of course, if you do want to get into it, like I gotta shill Casa, and of course, companies like Jack Mallers and Zap, I think, are doing really good work to make Lightning and Bitcoin easier to use for everyone.
All right, man. Well, listen, look, let's finish off with the last couple of questions. Tell me about your role at Casa. What are you doing?
So my official title is just product manager.
Sweet.
I will be focusing on the node and making it easier to use and possible ways to extend its usefulness. So like kind of like blue sky thinking, once you've got somebody used to like the idea of like, hey, I've got my own device in the house, it's letting me use Bitcoin in a secure, sovereign way. Like I'm in control of my money now. That's pretty cool. Well, what else could you do once you've got that device in your house? Like you could do more Bitcoin-y things with it, of course. Like we could load it once it has more power. You could load like your own Bitcoin Explorer on it. You could run a Lightning Explorer. You could do a lot more things locally on that box. But think about what other things you might want to get away from trusting other people to do. Like maybe it could be a VPN. Maybe you could run your email server on that. There's a lot of possibilities that we might want to explore once we get folks thinking about, hey, this is more than just my Bitcoin and Lightning box in my house. There's more stuff I can do with it.
Do you have Tor built into it?
It does, yeah. So you'll see that when you're in your setup, you can turn that on now. You can run Bitcoin or Lightning or both on Tor.
Amazing.
We can do that right now.
What about IDs? Have you looked into these decentralized IDs?
We are talking to folks that are working on that. CSU Wildcat at Microsoft.
Yeah.
He and I are in contact. I really love what Daniel's working on there. I used to work at Microsoft. I know a lot of folks in that company, and I look forward to working with Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel's wild. I mean, like he's a full anarchist working within Microsoft.
Yep. Yeah, he's Trojan horse his way into Microsoft. I love that he and others like him are in there.
All right, and just tell us also what's coming up for Casa, what we should keep an eye out for, and where people find out more about Casa, and also where people find out more about you and stay in touch with you.
Sure. So you can find me on Twitter. I'm Brian Lockhart. I am horribly non-anonymous. So just one word, Brian Lockhart. Go to keys.casa and learn more about Casa. We have, of course, our node. We have our Keymaster product, which is designed to help folks easily use multi-sig Bitcoin wallets for securing and storage of perhaps larger amounts of Bitcoin. We also just released something called SatsApp, where we're using that to help folks use their phones to connect back to your Casa node and send and receive Lightning payments really easily without having to be at a browser. We're pretty excited about that. We also announced a Sats tag, which is the idea of you don't have to use a Lightning invoice to pay somebody. I could pay you by your Sats tag. So if you had you'll have the option of setting up Sats tag, and you might get Peter, and I would just be able to use my Sats app. Say, hey, I want to send Peter just by that name 10,000 satoshis, and off it goes.
Amazing. Yeah. That whole having to do an invoice thing, I've always found a bit bizarre.
Yep, it's a necessary evil at the moment, but if you can find ways with good UX design to abstract it away and make it a little more user-friendly, the goal of Sats tags was to make it as easy to send Bitcoin as it is sending a text message. In this case, we're doing it with Satoshis.
Brilliant. All right, listen, Brian, look, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate this. Get this show out tomorrow, and I look forward to the feedback.
Yeah, I want to thank you for shining a light on running a Bitcoin node. I think a lot of folks maybe are just a little too freaked out by the number of options and maybe just don't take that first step. But as you know, once you take that first step, it's not that hard.
Yeah, it's not, especially if you've got a Casa node, it's not hard. I'm going to try out my node, we'll see how that's different. And also I'm downloading Bitcoin Core. I'll have them all running. The next step is actually having a play with them, and I'm sure I'll have a bunch of questions then.
Once you're set up, hit me up. My Sats tag is Brian, just Brian. So I'll send you some Satoshis and get you started with that.
You got that nice and early. Is the Sats tag Peter still available?
I don't know. I'll see what we can grab it for you. But if you hurry up and download the app and get into beta, you can grab it yourself.
Fuck, man. I need this thing to sync. All right, man. All right, well, listen, Brian, thanks again, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
No problem. Thank you.
So what did you think of that? Did you enjoy that interview with Brian? It's definitely useful for me. And what about full node? Are you running one? Do you think you should be? Are you ready? Is it clear? Are you going to do it with a Casa node? Are you going to do a Bitcoin Core node? Are you going to try and create one with a Raspberry Pi? I tried to do that myself as well, and that also is flipping complicated. So listen, look, as I take a closer look at the process and the options, I'm understanding more and more about the importance of it, and I completely understand the benefit to the protocol and the network. And whilst Luke Dasher talks about this 85% target of Bitcoin users running a full node, you know what? I think right now I just can't see how we reach those numbers, but maybe that's the wrong target. Maybe that's too far away. Maybe the target is to be reaching maybe like 10% and then 15%. Or maybe the target will be hit where companies like Casa are making it so easy for people. But I definitely think it's been useful to go through this process, to be transparent, to talk about the different options, to try them out myself, because yes, there are people out there who can figure it out with Google and YouTube, but that doesn't ensure maximum throughput. I want to help and ensure that people who aren't technical, who are a little bit intimidated by the process, understand how easy it is or understand the different options for them. Not all Bitcoiners are going to be technically competent or even have the time. I mean, some people have got kids and families and, they're going to get home from work and they've maybe got half an hour and an hour. Maybe they're not going to want to set up a full node. So look, let's be transparent about it. Let's talk about it. I think it's useful, and I'm definitely going to ignore the trolls and go with the people who've said, good on you, Pete. Thanks for doing this. I also do really like Casa. They're a company I've got a lot of time for. They've always had a solid approach to design and UX. Jeremy's such a great guy, loving him having on the podcast, and making this more convenient is pretty cool. I love their UX. I love what they're doing in education. And with some better compatibility with hardware wallets, then I think we'll certainly see the number of nodes grow. But yes, I'm going to carry on with the process. I'll keep documenting it. Keep swinging at me if you think this is a problem. But yeah, keep an eye on Twitter. I'll keep telling you what I'm doing with my node. Also, thank you for supporting the show. I'm not going to do the big list of things you can do because I did a really long intro and I just can't be bothered. But if you do want to support the show, just head over to my website. It's whatbitcoindid.com. Click on the support section. You can find out more there. Anything else, just hit me up. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com. As I said, I'm heading out to LA tomorrow. got Ruto Kung's event up in LA September the 1st. So yeah, looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing some of you there, and then a whole bunch of other events through the month. All right, have a great week, and I'll see you all soon.